I'm not going to do the dance. I looked at it and was like, no. Right, so quick one. Basically, I have done probably thousands and thousands of technical audits, and I've also been client-side, so I've seen thousands and thousands of audits. And I've kind of got to the point where I was like, actually, I just want to have a bit of a rant on stage on how to do it, how not to do it, what to do, and what not to do. This isn't going to be a checklist, and if you're looking for that, you know, you can go to lunch early. But basically, this is going to be a little bit of gotchas and don't gotchas. I have seen so many like audits where it's almost like a list of things of like you have 3,500 title tags that are too long. It's like, or above X pixels or something like that. And that just doesn't help anybody. You've got 4,300 broken links, or it's basically a list of problems rather than a description of what the problems actually are. And it just sends me crazy when I get these as a client. And I send it to a developer, and the developer looks at me and kind of goes, what the fuck is that for? You know, it can be that it's like 4,300 broken links, but it's actually just one page and it's a footer link across the site or something simple like that. So it's not that big a problem. I always have this kind of mental image that when I'm presenting my technical audits, you know, people are going to be around me kind of going, fuck, that's amazing. But it's amazing how often I've kind of presented a technical audit or listened to a technical audit and I've been a bit like, I kind of lost interest halfway through right at the start. I did, of course, ask ChatGPT what a technical audit should be, and it gave me kind of this thing, which was basically, I can't do it. But basically, in my head, I was like, no, it should be a comprehensive review of a website's technical components to identify and fix and hinder what's kind of underperforming. And prioritize action points as well. That is really, really important, basically. It's prioritization and making sure things actually get done. It should be actionable and comprehensive. And one of the things that I was chatting to some people about was the fact that they find that the worst audits, they kind of skip and they miss so many kind of key bits and pieces. So, yeah, how do I do one? I start with a client chat, and I think this is something that I didn't used to do a long time ago, and it was surprising how often I would miss out on this kind of core part of it. I would talk to the client, or give them the audit afterwards, and I'd be almost like, oh, wait, this is really important to you, and the bits that we concentrated over here, you just don't care about that. It's not important to your business. It's not critical, so I've just spent most of my time telling you all about this bit over here, and I missed the big picture over here. Finding out what is achievable as well. It is also surprising how often I've had client chats where they're like, oh, we can't touch this, it's out of our control. It's actually belongs, it's an API, it's a service, an external function, something that maybe can't be fixed. Sometimes it can be fixed, and you know, don't take everything that they say as face value. It's also good to understand the history of the business, the company and things, and basically also find out what actually they care about. I mean, often they have a set of KPIs, metrics, which are really, really important to them. And also find out a little bit about the kind of the history of the domain. Often you find out that there's a series of pages that have been neglected and an area, and it's just basically a tech debt hell. The technologies as well, one of the things that I do find incredibly useful is Systrix, to kind of have a look at the history. What's the history of it, what's happened to it, the technologies on it, and I go through that quite extensively. Also looking at the crux data, did something happen a year ago? Something changed, something's improved? What's happening? Crux data, by the way, in case you haven't seen it, is kind of it's Google's basically scorecard of their core web vitals. And this historical information is easily accessible on most big websites now. So, and they've actually improved the interface for it. So if you go cruxviz with google.com, the interface there, really solid, love it. Yeah, and then the first part is the browse. I basically sit and literally just browse the website. I spend probably about an hour or so just literally going over the website, trying to find everything that's kind of particularly wrong with it or anything that jumps out at me. And normally, I also do it with a mobile phone as well, so I can actually check it out on my phone at the same time, or even using like the device emulator built into console. And as I'm doing this, I'm basically writing down loads and loads and loads and loads of notes. Some of these notes are not important. Some of these notes I'll be like, yep, that's actually irrelevant. But I'll be kind of writing hundreds of notes. One thing I would say is make sure your notes mean something to you afterwards. The amount of times where I've looked through my notes and found the illegible scribbles. Have the Google Chrome console panel open at the same time. And I say this because actually there's so much information that people don't see in there broken links, 404s, broken images, oversized bits, things not working. And I often find in that little bit there's a huge amount of information that is just available, which you kind of skip and miss. I also have the network part, which often shows you when there's huge images. You can add in some extra columns into this as well. So there's a protocol and various other columns, which means that you can learn a little bit more. Built into Google Chrome, the Inspector tools, so much information, dev tools, sorry, there's so much information hidden away in there that people never look at. And like I say, you can add in these extra columns by just right-clicking on the top of one column, and then you can add all of the extra columns that you want. And if you don't add in things like the protocol, you don't know if it's being loaded over to HTTP 1.1 or HTTP 3 or something like that. So there's huge opportunities to look at more. The other thing I do is I use a little bit JavaScript, which you don't have to copy because it's actually on my website as a bookmarklet, and all that does is it finds all the links in a page. So if I'm kind of looking at the home page, I can scrape all the links from the home page in 10 seconds, and job done. So, yep, it's basically a bookmarklet, and if you're familiar with bookmarklets, they're really easy. You put the JavaScript into the URL, save it as a bookmark, and you can run it on any page. What was this one? Can't remember what this one is. Oh yeah, the other thing to do is have a quick look across at it to make sure that there's no dodgy content. I've had a number of clients where I kind of did site search or something, and I'd find out that there was like hacked content, like OnlyFans content or something similar. This happened to a recent company, a chocolate company, and I was like, oh, that is fun. And it was often on a little domain name. This is unrelated to that bit, but Christina's got a great Chrome plugin as well, which does everything like I've just mentioned. It finds all like the title tags, the images, the schema, social, and links in the page. So her Chrome plugin is incredibly useful. The other thing that I then do is I go into Google Search Console after I've done all that, and I start to look at like the problems that Google Search Console's found. Particularly things like the soft 404 pages. If there's like 9,000 soft 404 pages, that's a massive red flag. And yeah, often it's things like this page isn't missing, which is returning a 200 header, or a 500, which is returning a 200 header. Sometimes it's something as simple as that. And going through it, it's quite simple, but sometimes it's a no products found page. Google will actually find these as being a soft 404 page. One of the things that I did find interesting is if you have a look at the ASOS website, there's thousands of these, oh no, this brand is out of stock page indexed, like literally thousands. In fact, if you do a site search for it, oh no, that brand is out of stock, you can actually see, for instance, there's 27 odd pages of it. So, you know, they've got a serious issue with that. I think that's something which their SEO agency should look into. Also, duplicate content without user-selected canonical. One thing about AI is it can't spell. It really fucks up any image. So please excuse all the typos in the images. That's AI, not me. Honest. But yeah, you often find that there's a simple thing like a page such as the login page has got a parameter on it, and if it hasn't got canonical, Google's going to turn around and find thousands of duplicates of this, and it's going to crawl them all, and it's going to waste time doing that. And so it's often an easy fix to fix stuff like that. And that's the kind of thing which I want to look at to kind of go, okay, what's happened here? And you know, you can see on this site, they've got 30,000 pages of alternate page without a proper canonical. And that is actually only 2 or 3 different templates. It's just scaled up. This is a friend of mine's website, and one of the things that I was looking at, the first thing I spotted was the fact that all of the internal links have a variant code attached to them. It doesn't go to the canonical. This was a quick fix, but that's the kind of thing that I look for before I start to go through into like using tools like Screaming Frog and stuff. Crawled, not indexed. I found thousands of feed URLs as well. So there's hundreds of these things. And you know, one of the things I've often not been able to figure out is what does that button do, the validate fix? I've never figured out what that actual button does. But yeah, basically, as I'm going through all this, I'm writing all of this down into kind of notes. And the reason I'm doing this is then when I load up Screaming Frog, I can then start to look for all these specific things or hide certain things. So for instance, that variant issue, I know about that, so I can then kind of like go, right, I'll actually sort something out. You can also pull in loads of extra information, like the page speed insights. You can look for the extra headers, like the JSON LD. Make sure all of this stuff is there when you're doing the audit, because this stuff is absolutely vital when you're kind of giving them the output. I mentioned before the variant, so you can, basically remove the parameter there and make sure that, you know, when you do the crawl, you're actually getting an effective crawl, even though you know there's a problem. You don't need to tell them about that problem twice, because you're going to fix that problem, or they're going to fix that problem. It's fine. And you can also choose the parts to exclude. So if they've got a crawl trap, then you can kind of remove it, like the feed or the login or something like that. So suddenly you've got a faster, cleaner crawl, and that makes life a lot easier when you're trying to deal with what the client's got at the end. And that thing that I said, oh no, that brand is out of stock, you can find that by using something called XPath in the page, and then you can find every page which has got that, so you can find out where it's linked to, what the problem is, and you can take it from there. So yeah, basically, once you build out this kind of extra crawl information, that's when you actually run Screaming Frog. You complete it, and then you click the crawl analysis. That's always something that's critical to do, and there you go. You've got your crawl, and you've got pages over 60 characters, 20,000. And that's the kind of information that if I gave to a client, he would be really unhappy with, because he wouldn't know what that means, what does it actually go for. And that's the kind of thing which I've seen in way too many SEO audits and reports recently. The other thing to remember is that every website normally, or at least most of the websites that I've worked on in enterprise and small businesses, everything, they're normally like 3 different pages. There's only 3 or 4 different pages on most of these websites. So when I worked on Just Eat, we laughed about the fact that there was only actually 4 pages, but each of these templates are replicated out, so minor fixes on these one templates made massive improvements across the wall. So yeah, looking at like one of the pages, I would also want to kind of focus into what like that information means. So I'm going to talk again about that page title over 60 pixels. One of the things you can do is you can actually graph it out and say, actually, let's have a chart of where the page is, what the title tag lengths are. And you can do something quite quickly like that in Excel. It's just using a pivot table. It's really, really easy. It takes about 10 minutes. And there you've got a much better information. And if you use it with like the different templates, you can see, for instance, which templates have actually got short title tags. There's a massive opportunity there. Which ones have got long templates? Good example is I worked on an e-commerce website, and all of his title tags were very, very short, so I went, okay, we can put the category in at the end of it, and it will help Google differentiate what the actual product's about. And it improved traffic substantially for that. So yeah, basically it's a what kind of thing. You find out what the opportunity is, and if 78% of them are too short, then you can actually add in some extra characters. But again, you've got the data to test it, you've got the data to add in, you've got the data to look at it, and you've got recommendations. So yeah, basically focusing on each of these templates and going down all the different states of them. So like if it's a product listing page, you've got what happens when there's out of stock, what happens when the pages move, what happens with the no products, what happens with the pagination. So suddenly you've got kind of a one page, but you've got lots of different variants of it and lots of different problems with it. And honestly, it's when the product is out of stock that you kind of find that, do they just leave it there? There's a Irish store that I found, and when I found out that they still had millions of old product pages on the website, they weren't linked to, they weren't there, I was a bit like, I don't know, it feels like a risk, what we're going to do with it. And when we went through and started redirecting them, traffic substantially increased, because a lot of the time they were the last year's version of the Adidas trainer or something. Internal links, making sure that they're all linking to the canonical text, make sure the link text is there. Read more is terrible. And so basically making sure all of that works really well. Page speed, how does it load? Chrome helps a lot, but also use external tools like GTmetrix, Screaming Frog, and the page speed API. One of the things that I am kind of looking at the moment is using RUM data a lot more. So if you know anything about that, basically a lot of the time we're kind of going, oh, this looks perfect, absolutely amazing. And then when we look into it, we often find that the clients aren't getting, well, the visitors aren't getting the best experience. And the interesting thing that I found out at Just Eat was our website was a hell of a lot slower when users were using it than when we were testing it, because we would test it at like 10 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever time in the daytime. Then when there's millions of users using it, suddenly it seemed to slow down a little bit. So testing it when your users are using it is also something that you can do. So basically user testing and also making sure that you replicate the conditions. All the metadata, SEO, especially the canonical tag. The canonical tag is the one tag that I think I find more problems with than anything else. I've often found that the canonical tag is just something which is either badly implemented or there's hacks or something. And yeah, if you make sure that there's no risks in that, it's good. Again, Christina's plugin, use that across it. And yeah, one of the things again on the ASOS website is that all of these links we're going to no index pages. On this major page, there's like an internal link opportunity here. Basically, if you've got lots of your main pages linking to no index pages, that's a huge risk. Look at all these links no indexed. I don't know why I'm picking on ASOS, I just kind of chose that one as a random client. Checking the hreflang, checking everything works there. I actually did find a fun one where a client had a lot of their traffic going to the wrong language variant, and I looked into it, and it's like, that's because they hadn't matched up the hreflang for this one section of the website. So there's lots of kind of big opportunities. So once you've done all that, then you go into Bing Webmaster Tools, because Bing actually gives you another load of information. And if you've got Google Search Console access, you've almost automatically got Bing, because you can click a button, sync them all up, and you've got access. And again, I've seen so many audits where I sort of said, is the sitemap submitted to Bing? Or is all that kind of information done? And they don't do it. They literally kind of go, no, we forgot about that. So yeah, make sure that XML sitemaps are in Bing. People underestimate Bing because actually it sends quite a lot of mature, highly converting traffic, and it's not that bad. But I've had about 5 to 10% extra traffic if I made sure everything is done right. Google Merchant Center is another area that's completely neglected. Every SEO audit I've kind of read recently, they never sort of look at Merchant Center. A Merchant Center is now accounting for a crazy percentage of traffic going to a lot of my clients' websites. So make sure that there's all of the approved and things like that. So if you see big red lines like that, it might not be that bad, but go in, check it out, and fix it all up. The other thing to check is Google Local. Once upon a time, I was in a little place called Crawley, and I was thinking, I'll go and have a look at Millie's cookies. And you see that thing that says see outside? I clicked onto it, and that's what it looked like. So I was like, I don't think that's the cookie place I'm going to be going to in Crawley. Have a look at all the things like the there's lots of extra information in here, including in the crawl stats, which I think people are not looking at. Another thing that I've also been doing a lot more now is you can link your Google Search Console data to Google Cloud, to BigQuery. And I've seen a lot of opportunities with people exporting that and using that information correctly. Go and look in the settings, have a look at the hosts, because I've seen a lot of the time that this host thing has gone a little bit weird. I say that because often Google will be hammering a host which shouldn't be driving any traffic. And I'm trying to figure out what's happening there. One of the interesting things was that other file type, that 29%, that was all fonts. We couldn't figure out why Google was hammering the font files quite so much. And yeah, basically also making sure the XML sitemaps have got all of the opportunities and all the things built into them. Okay. The other thing is, when you're presenting all this data back to a client, this is the thing that I find infuriating, is I've seen a report like that big, and I kind of clicked into it, opened it up, started reading through it, and it got a lot of information about why HTTPS is really, really important for SEO and users. Pages of information about everything. And then, at the bottom of it, it said, actually, yeah, it's fine. And I'm like, why I've just give me the crux of it, and there's a way of writing which is basically an inverted pyramid. So if you kind of want to do it, start with the really good stuff, and any of the fluff, put it down the bottom. I often sort of turn around to a client and say, your canonical tags are da-da-da-da, and da-da-da. And then at the bottom, there'll be a bit about what a canonical tag is, why it's important, all the kind of extra bits and pieces. Because a lot of the time, if there's a problem, I want them to know there's a problem and why it's a problem, and that's it. I now present my tech audits using slides and Google Sheets. I don't know why this is the way I do it now, but this is the way in which, because 9 times out of 10 when I'm presenting it back to a client, they want it visual, they want it simple, they want it like that. But the other thing that I do is I also link out to tickets. So the other thing you can do with Sheets is you can program into them. So you can create them live and dynamic. So I'll often say, check this canonical tag, check for this, or check that this is matching this. And if I've got a sheet where I've got, these are the templates with no canonical tags, and I'll give them a sheet with some of them, it actually has something which checks it dynamically and live. So they don't have to ask me to recrawl the website and check it. They can actually check stuff like that. So it's really simple. I'm increasingly doing that. So yeah, it's found all those pages with no canonical tags. Low-hanging fruit, really, really important. Basically, you want to prioritize and make sure they know what is happening. That's a terrible image for no-hanging fruit. But also, the other thing that people really want in a report is the things that you've checked. So if you have checked stuff, actually just say, yes, we checked the robots.txt file, no problems. We checked this, no problems. Make sure they know that you've checked it, because it's surprising how often that audit will go to somebody else and they go, oh, but did they check this? And they'll come back to you and go, did you check this? And then it wastes time, basically. Vanda, who's there. Vanda did a fantastic talk about basically writing tickets and doing all that kind of stuff, so I'm not going to talk too much about that, so talk to Vanda later. And yeah, the other thing is there's a lot of other hidden elements on a website. How many people here check manifest files ever? 2, 3, 4. But basically, manifest files, often it says sample web application or something similar like that. I mean, an old agency I used to work for years, I was always amused by the fact that it said, you know, PWA example project in it for years. And I told them after I left, look, please fix it because it's embarrassing because I was there when it wasn't doing it. If you don't know what a manifest file is, it gives you the icons so you can install it on a phone or you can install it on a desktop. I actually use Paramount and Disney installed on my desktop, on my MacBook, by using the PWA version rather than having to install something. It's really powerful, really simple. But again, if you don't do it right, it doesn't work. Passwords and sharing. This is another thing which nobody ever checks or nobody ever does. If you've got an Android app and you've got a website, you can set it up so it shares the username and passwords automatically, but you have to put this into it. And if you don't do it, it's just frustrating, especially as nowadays I never ever use my own passwords. I use a password tool to kind of make sure everything kind of shares, and I don't have, you know, the same password for 22 different sites anymore after it got hacked. The other thing that's really interesting is I'm loving Cloudflare as well. Have a look at the information available in Cloudflare. There is a crazy amount more. And actually an audit, if you get the opportunity to audit the settings in Cloudflare, that's another thing which is absolutely missing from most audits. And again, there's so many little checkboxes, which is like, will it improve page speed? Yes, tick it, basically. And going through this kind of thing and making sure that you've done this, it's missed by a lot of people. You can see a lot of this information in places like the HTTP headers to find out what's available, what's there, but kind of doing that stuff is really, really important. And the future. I saw this at a conference recently, MeasureCamp, and I was blown away by what it could do. Basically, you can hook Gemini's MCP up to Google Android, and I swear that if I can figure out how to get this done properly, this is going to be incredibly powerful for people. Simon's in the room somewhere. I don't know if he is, but he's normally at the bar at this point. But basically, Simon was talking to me about this as well. The power in this kind of technology is incredibly powerful to basically automate and do things at scale which you could never have done as easily before. I mean, you can use Screaming Frog like Gus was talking about, but I was looking at this and kind of going, there's so much opportunity to scale, implement, and do stuff. This here is a llm.txt. And I don't know if they're being used yet, but just check it. If it's there, check it. If it's not there, don't worry about it too much for now, but basically put it on the radar that you've checked it, it's not there, and put it as a low priority to kind of do later. I asked the audience for their kind of like what people kind of said was good and bad in tech audits, and it came back with almost everybody basically said, if you put in a screenshot from SEMrush or Screaming Frog or something like that, they hate it. And so basically, high priority, but page speed issues as well. Page speed issues often isn't as big a priority as people think it is. People are obsessed with it. It's like, it must be critical that it's got a page speed of X, Y, Z. And I'm looking at it kind of going, well, there's a video on it. You won't get that page score. You can't do it. You can't achieve the score that you kind of set yourself. It's not as critical. It's more critical that that video actually improves conversion and engagement and stuff. So, you know, prioritization using your brain is more important than prioritization. And not understanding the tech stack as well. Like, for instance, I've had people send me stuff, and it's like, oh, you can fix this with a htaccess file. I'm like, that's not on this server. There's no htaccess file. Stop kind of doing that. Let the developers talk to you about how to do stuff. You can kind of say recommendations, but don't over-complicate, don't over-solutionize almost. Make sure that you sort of say, this is the problem, this is what we would do, but don't tell them how to code necessarily. Site health scores. That is one of the most BS metrics ever. I mean, I don't know what it means. And it's amazing how many times I've been to like an agency or a client or something like that, and they're like, oh yeah, but our site health is 87%, we need to improve it. I'm like, I don't understand what. The other thing people say is they expect prioritization. They want alignment with business goals, which is really important, and comprehensive. And what people really loved was an internal link analysis. They wanted good implementation and comprehensive forecasting. One person loved Loom videos, and Jonathan put in Consolus font. I've never known anybody have a font preference in their audits before. But yeah, it's basically a list of things that you checked. And that's basically it. Technical audit, how I kind of start it, go about it, and get stuff done. So yeah, hope to see you guys later.
Thank you.